His job affects just about every moment of my life.
Society is bombarded with unrealistic perceptions of police officers. It is not all gunfights and traffic stops. In reality, police officers such as Hot Springs Lieutenant John Burfine deal with the more day-to-day prevalent office duties.
I've been doing this for 23 years. Started out as a patrol officer. I went on to become a school resource officer for about 5 years. Then after that, I went into narcotics, worked undercover narcotics for a while, then went on to violent crimes and property crimes. Property crimes for a couple of years, and then violent crimes for several years, which includes the most heinous crimes that that we investigate.
People are crazy. I mean, it's just obvious. It's all over everywhere. And they do love to target cops. And I mean, he could be that one, and that one cop out of all of them that some crazy person tries to attack. When he's most vulnerable.
Went back to the detective bureau where I was over the detective bureau, and then again promoted again where I am over different divisions in the department. I've always enjoyed helping people and being there for others, and standing up for people that can't really take up for themselves.
I'm satisfied with him protecting our community and making sure everyone has a nice, safe area.
Being a police officer is a tough and demanding job, not just on the individual but also on their family. It's important that you have a good structure and that you have a family that's committed to stand behind you, and you also have to rise above. We're typically held to a higher standard, and so you've got to meet that higher standard, and you have to set an example not just for people in your family and people inside the department, but for people out in the community as well. Everybody's looking at you at all the time, and they're wanting to see what you're doing, and you have to set that higher standard and better example. It varies from mine. I'm at work administration, so mine, I'm checking other people's reports, checking other people's job functions, and making sure that they're doing their jobs correctly. But all of our positions are different here. So when I was in narcotics and vice, I would actively seek out drug dealers and purchase drugs from them and seek them out and put them in prison was my ultimate goal. Same way with violent crimes, I would always try to solve every crime that came across my desk, which stayed quite busy. But we would actually spend a lot of time, days at a time, working cases for the successful conclusion of convicting somebody that's done something wrong to somebody else. It's something that you feel like you're called to do, and you just want to really rise above and help other people, be there for people whenever, and be there to, help people. I mean, and by helping people, sometimes that means taking them to jail, because sometimes people need to be taken to jail to help themselves. So the challenges, I guess, would be, always setting that good example, always being there for people, and then rising above the scrutiny and things like that you commonly hear about in the media. I've had vehicles that try to run me over. I've been in shootouts. I've done, I've been in undercover narcotics where, you're, trying to buy, you're in a hairy situation, you're buying something, and all of a sudden you think this person recognizes me as an officer. And, of course they're pulling guns and everything else. And, I've always had God on my side. So I've always, I've never been hurt, thankfully. But there's been some times that I've been very scared.
That's probably my worst, fear right there, is him getting attacked or killed. I would change about the hostileness, of people, because sometimes, just like I said before, you have these people that are kind of crazy. And so if I could change that where they're not as bad of people, yes, there's going to be the, occasional traffic stop or whatever, but I'm talking about the people that are out to specifically just target police officers. If you could remove that, that'd be amazing.
Proudest moments are whenever you help somebody. And, and I know this is sounding kind of, but when you help somebody that can never repay you, that's a pretty good feeling. Whenever you can give somebody, a positive outlook on life, whenever they just went through the most horrifying, tragic situation they've ever been in. And whenever you can go help them and put them in a positive, direction. Many times when people come back to me years later and say thank you, and I may not even remember them at that point, but it's very nice whenever, when that happens. and you realize that, hey, I actually made a difference in somebody's life.
I mean, he's a behind the scenes guy. You know, you don't see him, but he's doing all that main work that, you know, I mean, just like any other cop.
I'm going to treat you the same if a camera is rolling or a camera is not rolling. You know, I'm going to treat you the same if we're in church as if we are if we're, you know, at school together talking. So it really doesn't affect how we do our job. It does affect how people perceive that we do our job sometimes. Officers are people, and sometimes they do things wrong, just as, you know, sometimes teachers or physicians or anybody else does anything wrong. But whenever it's an officer, it is, you know, it's an arm of the government. And so that's why you have to be held to a higher level of accountability. You know, we don't get to make mistakes that other people get to make without it being scrutinized. And for the most part, there is not very much brutality out there. You know, statistically, you can go and look, it's not that bad. But with mass media today, when something does happen, it gets, you know, spread a lot faster. Whereas when I was younger, your age, you know, it may make the paper, it may not, then nobody's gonna know about it.
He is more in a controlled environment now because he's, you know, he's behind a desk now, but, you know, I mean, he still has a lot of workload, but with him being behind a desk, you know, he's not out in the street, he's not have to constantly watch his six. So there's a lot of, you know, less pop-up, you know, attacks that could be, you know, it could possibly happen. And so that, you know, kind of just makes me feel a lot safer, better, you know, knowing that he's not going to get attacked from his six or whatever.
I'm very fortunate. I work with a lot of professionals, so we haven't had any issues here. And we also have a really good community. So, you know, there have been use of force issues where we've had to use force on somebody that was being combative or trying to hurt somebody else or kill somebody else. That is part of the job. While it may look to the common person that it might be brutality, we're trained to handle people in certain ways that we don't inflict, you know, long-term pain on them or anything like that. We're mainly looking for compliance. So whenever you see someone wrestling, we're not trying to hurt them or anything like that. We're trying to just keep, you know, to get them placed into custody where they're not a threat to themselves or anybody else.
I wouldn't have these certain, I guess you could call skills, where you notice like fine details, you know, to check your surroundings more, a little more of, you know, defense tactics. I wouldn't know those, I think. And so if, you know, if he wasn't a police officer and you know, you wouldn't have those skills, you wouldn't know that knowledge. And so, you know, you'd be really vulnerable compared to someone who does know that stuff.
We set what the expectation is, and we have to rise above actually what the expectation is. We have to be a little bit better. Even like, it's kind of like being a teacher's kid or, you know, school administrator's kid. You know, no matter what, they're going to look at you, and then you're going to be used as an example. Whether you create a small mistake or a big mistake, it's always going to be, you know, that teacher's kid did this. And the same way with police officers, same way with pastors. Anytime you're a community leader, and you're held to a much higher standard, and you need to, you know, you need to acknowledge that, and you need to own it. One thing is, people are going to say you're going to be scrutinized no matter what. I don't care if you go do something right. Somebody is going to say that was the wrong way to do it. And for instance, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting several years ago. I did everything correct, but there was some people that wanted to, you know, just, you know, they weren't there, but they heard something and they misconstrued something, and then they get on Facebook. Okay, and it gets blown out of proportion. I mean, obviously everything was done correctly, but, you know, me personally, I had to ignore it. You know, deactivate my social media accounts. I had a sister that wanted to defend me to the end, and I'm like, just let it go. You don't, you know, everything we do plays out in the courts. You've got to make a call and stick by what you did, and you know, and your heart is the right call. But, you know, some people will say it was the wrong one. That's life. I don't care what race you are, what gender you are. I mean, it makes no difference at all. We're here to enforce the laws, and we're going to enforce it, you know, without bias. And so we actually have a lot of training on that to make sure that we don't, you know, that we're staying, you know, unbiased. And so actually we put a lot of safeguards in place to keep that from happening. Even when new officers come in, we want to make sure that everybody's treated fairly, and that's You got to treat everybody the same. And we love the public. We do care about them. That's why we get up every morning and come to work. We're here to protect them. And that's our number one goal. You know, protect life, then protect property. And that's why we are here. We can't be everywhere at one time. You know, there's roughly almost 40,000 people in this town, and being policed by about 106 police officers. You know, one little call can lead to a significant reduction in crime, like in a particular area. So if you see something suspicious, please give us a call.